Hi, and welcome to DiGiDi's video guide for music registration. My name is Jacob, and I'll help you get your first release off to a great start. So once you've been approved as a DiGiDi shareholder and have created a user account on the Orchard by following the link we sent you by email, the first thing you need to do to register your release is to log into Workstation and create a project folder by clicking the New Project button. It's inside this project folder that you can create your products, such as singles, EPs, or albums. But first, we need to fill in the information for the project folder. In project name and project code, you need to enter unique codes that will be used for internal identification. In this example, we're uploading an album for the artist The Seaweed Dreamers, titled Under the Sea. So in this case, we're going to write Under the Sea in the project name, and we're going to write UTS 2025 in the project code. The codes must be unique, meaning the code you enter must not already be used in the system. You can use an abbreviation of the artist or album name and the release number. So for instance here, the abbreviation for the project code is UTS 2025. You'll be notified when you click Create Project if any of the names are already taken. In the project artist field, you need to be very careful to enter the name correctly with respect to uppercase and lowercase letter. So we will write The Seaweed Dreamers, and we make sure it appears as we want it, with S and D and T capitalized. Let's see here. Then we will click Create New Artist. Now, the system will ask whether it's one of the following profiles. If the band or artist has already released music before, we might find the artist profile in this list. You will then click on the circle next to the correct profile and press Next. Since the Seaweed Dreamers is a brand new artist, they don't yet have an artist profile on the streaming services. So we select This artist isn't on Spotify. And then we click Next. And we do the same for Apple Music. So we click there, and then we press Done. If you have released music before, but you can't find your artist profile on the list, then you also select This artist isn't on Spotify for now. Later in the video, we'll show you where to insert links to the correct artist profiles to ensure your release is delivered to the right places. Project description doesn't need to be filled out, but you can use the field to write notes to yourself about the releases in the project folder. So in this case, we'll write Album Under the Sea. Let's see here. Under the Sea, artist The Seaweed Dreamers. Once that's done, click Create Project, and you will see the newly created project folder. Project info is the data you entered earlier, but there's also a field called Marketing Highlights. However, you don't need to fill this out. Marketing Highlights is used by DiGiDi to communicate with the Orchard about playlist pitching. If you want to know more about the pitching process, check out the link about pitching in the video description. Now that the project folder is ready, you can create your actual release. Click New Product on the left-hand side. And here you can choose between music, video, or digital. Digital is for music releases and video is for music videos. So in this case, we're going to choose digital. And then we get a few options. We get full-length, EP, or single. Full length is for an album with more than 6 songs or more than 30 minutes of playtime. EP is for 4 to 6 tracks with a total playtime under 30 minutes. And then we have single, which is for 1 to 3 tracks, each under 10 minutes long. In this example, we'll select full length since we're uploading a full album with 7 songs. In product name, enter the name of the album. So we'll write Under the Sea. And once again, be sure to use correct capitalization as this is how the name will appear on streaming platforms. In our case, the album is called Under the Sea. If you're releasing a single, the product name should be the same as the name of the single track. The version field, product version field over here, you'll only need to fill it out if it's, for instance, a remastered version of an album or single that has already been released, or perhaps a live recording. If it's an original release, you don't need to enter anything in the version field. In the product code field, you don't need to enter anything. Only the fields marked with an asterisk are required to get your release approved. So here we have the asterisk here that indicates that this is required to fill in. Finally, the system asks for UPC code. And in this case, just select that the orchard will assign one for me and click Create Digital Product. For your information, the UPC code is like a barcode for the product itself, and it should not be confused with an ISRC code, which is a barcode for each individual track. So now you've created the draft for your first release and can see the overview of the release. So to continue, click the edit button next to the field you want to change, or click the field on the left side here. We will start with the basics. Basics contains the general information for the entire release. The UPC code has already been assigned to us by the system, so we don't need to fill in anything here. We can also skip the product code, as it doesn't have an asterisk here, which requires us to fill in this field. In the meta language field, choose the language the album or single title is written in. So in this case, it's English. And then here you can see and enter the product name, which is the name the album should have on streaming services. So in this case, it's Under the Sea. Below that, it's the product version, which should only be filled out if it's, for example, a live or acoustic version, or another version where it's important to distinguish it from others. If the song was originally only created as an acoustic version, then you don't need to enter anything in this version field here. You can read more about product versions in the product version guidelines link in the video description. In the primary artist field, you enter the artist's name again. So, the Seaweed Dreamers. And you should only select it from the list of registered artist names here. So we'll select that one. And here you might be asked again if the artist is linked to a profile if you previously chose this artist isn't on Spotify or Apple. In that case, just choose the same option again and click Next. If you've released music digitally before but still can't find your artist profile in the list, even after choosing Show All, then scroll to the bottom of the page to the Special Instructions field and type the following. Please deliver to the following profile. And then paste the URL links to the correct profile that we should ensure the release is delivered to. So below primary artist, we find featuring artists. This should be filled in if there's another artist who is not part of the main group featured on all the tracks on the album or single. Since there's no featuring artist on this album, we do not enter anything in this field. If you do have a featuring artist that you want to highlight equally with the main artist, we recommend using the option Deliver as featuring artist to Spotify, Tidal, and Deezer as primary. Some platforms like Apple can get confused if there are two primary artists listed on the release. That's why we suggest always putting features in the featuring field and choosing Deliver as primary. This way, platforms can handle it properly, and they will show them as an extra main artist. And we also avoid issues on the platforms that can handle it properly. The remixer field should only be used if it's a remix. That is, if an electronic artist has created a new track using the audio files from, for example, the Under the Sea album. It's not a field for entering a person responsible for mixing. If the track is a remix, then enter the remixing artist in the remixer field and put the original artist in the primary artist field. Moving on to producer. Producer should only be entered here at the basic level if the same producer has produced all the tracks on the release. If there are different producers for different tracks, then you'll enter them individually later in the process. In that case, leave this field empty for now. Moving on to genre. Here you choose what genre the album belongs to. You must select both a main genre and a subgenre. Some genres, like classical, soundtrack, and spoken word, have specific formatting rules and restrictions attached. You can read more about those in the link in the video description. But for this release, we're going to choose, let's see here, pop as the main genre, and then we'll select dream pop as a subgenre. Let's see here, format. We've already chosen the format, which is a full-length album in this case. And then moving on to imprint. Imprint is where you enter a label name based on the publisher and owner of the release. In this case, it will be Seaweed Production. So we'll enter Seaweed Production here and then press Add Imprint. And you don't need to have a company to create a label as such. So if you haven't released music before, you can just make up an imprint name. But do not copy an already existing label. So then click Add New Imprint, enter the name, and then click Add Imprint. If you've already created an imprint, you can find it at the drop-down menu right over here. But in this case, we have only created one imprint called Seaweed Production. Moving on to the C-line. The C-line is the copyright statement for the release, including the imprint. The C-line, also called the copyright line in music registration, indicates the ownership of the copyright for a musical work. This copyright protects the original work and gives the owners exclusive rights to reproduce, distribute, perform, publicly share, or license the work. In terms of intellectual property law, copyright represents the legal recognition of music as a form of intellectual property. It gives the creator control and ensures they can earn from their work while also preventing unauthorized use. This release is coming out in 2025, so we will enter 2025 followed by our imprint, which is Seaweed Production. At the bottom here, there's a field called Internal Notes. Product version notes are not used, but the special instructions field is important. Here, you can specify details about the delivery of your release. For instance, if you couldn't find the artist profile when entering the primary or featuring artist, you could paste the relevant links here so we can ensure the release is delivered to the correct profiles. And if you, for example, want to deliver the song to a specific service or system, or only want the music to be available for download or streaming on specific streaming services, then you also need to include that in the special instructions field. By default, we deliver to all known platforms and systems. For a complete overview of all services, you can check the list in the video description under Streaming Services and Copyright Systems. So, for example, if you already have a big YouTube channel and you upload content there yourself, you can write, "Do not create YouTube art track." When everything is entered, click Save at the bottom, and you'll automatically be taken to the next step. So in this case here, we would have entered, for instance, different URL links to certain Spotify profiles if we wanted to deliver the release to a specific artist profile that we couldn't find in the primary artist field. But in this case, we're not going to write anything here because it's a completely brand new artist. So now we're moving on to the artwork. Here you upload the artwork you've created for the release. You can see the technical specifications for the artwork on the side here. It must be between 3000 times 3000 pixels and 6000 times 6000 pixels. And it should be in either TIFF or JPG format. The most important thing is that the image is square. So what you want to do here is that you can either drag and drop your artwork here, which I am doing right now, or you can either click browse to find the image on your computer. Now it will load for a moment and then confirm whether the image is accepted or rejected. If there's an error in the size or format, the system will show an error message and highlight the issue. If the image is approved, such as in this case, click Save and Continue. Be aware that there are several guidelines regarding what can appear in the artwork. For example, it's prohibited to include barcodes or website URLs on the artwork. You can check the specific rules in the link in the video description under Artwork Guidelines. So now we've reached the point where we upload the individual tracks and their audio files for the release. The system accepts both WAV and FLAC files. For a full overview of accepted file types, check the link in the video description under File Types, Music, and Upload. If you already have all your files ready on your computer, you can just select Upload from Computer. It's often a good idea to upload all files at once. It might take some time for them to be uploaded, so while they're uploading, you might as well go and grab a coffee and come back in a few minutes. So, we gave it a few minutes and the files are now fully uploaded. We can see the individual tracks listed here, and we're currently viewing the data for track number 1, which is also highlighted here. In the top right corner, we can see the name of the audio file. It's a good idea to check that the correct master file was uploaded by verifying the file name. The track is initially named after the file name, but since the track should not be called the Surface Master version 3, we will type in the correct name here instead, which is only the Surface. Above here, there's something called TikTok and Preview Start Point. You can read more about that in the video description under TikTok and Preview Start Point, but it's basically the preview start point which is used in Apple Music and TikTok. In this case, it starts at 30. You're welcome to mark focus track on the song you'd like to highlight from the release, which we have done in this case here. If you're releasing an album or an EP, it's the focus track you'll pitch through Spotify for Artists and DiGiDi. If you want to pitch through DiGiDi, ticking the box isn't enough. If you're interested in pitching, read the Pitch to Playlist guide in the video description. The versions field should generally not be filled out here, since this is an original album. You can check the versions guide in the video description below if you're unsure. Track name displayed as shows how the track title will appear on streaming platforms. Lyrics language, here you choose the language primarily sung in the song, and if the song has no lyrics at all, you just press instrumental. But in this case, the primary language is English. Note that you can press Apply to All function here. For most fields, there's a button called Apply to All. Clicking it copies the content in the selected field to all the other uploaded tracks, which can save you a lot of time. And since all of the tracks here are in English, we will press Apply to All. Then you'll have to select something about the explicit content. So select None if there's no swearing or explicit content. Select Explicit if there's swearing or explicit references to sex, violence, or drugs. And Clean is used if the original song contained explicit lyrics, but it's been removed or censored in this version. Track lyrics are great to include in your release, but it's not mandatory. However, if you submit a pitch, then entering lyrics is required, since Apple requires this before they'll accept a pitch. You can find guidelines for how lyrics should be formatted in the link beneath the lyrics field, so right here. The lyrics inserted here won't be available on streaming services. For that, you need to use a separate system called musicxmatch.com. You can find the link and a guide in the video description under lyrics on streaming services. So we move on to contributors, and here you enter the artists, groups, or bands that appear on each track. Since the Seaweed Dreamers was entered in the basics section, they already appear in the primary artist field here. However, if there are one or more tracks with a featuring artist, enter that artist's name here in the featuring artist field for the specific track. Remixers are considered artists in their own right. Again, this is not a field for the mixing engineer. It should only be used if an electronic artist has used parts of a track, not a full recording, to create a new version. If the song is a remix, enter the remixer's artist name in the remixer field over here, not the featuring artist field. Songwriters, here you must enter the legal names of the people who originally wrote the song. In this case, it's Simon Larsen and Alex Brook. And you'll have to press enter respectively for each songwriter. This field is extremely important to complete correctly, as a portion of streaming revenue is earmarked for songwriters. To ensure that songwriter royalties are distributed correctly, you should also register the song with Coda, STIM, or another rights organization that handles composer and songwriter royalties. If you're not comfortable having your real name publicly available, you can create a songwriter alias with Coda, STIM, or any other rights organization. Moving on to the producer, here you enter the name of the producers who worked on the track. And in this case, the producer is named Producer Brooklyn. Now we're moving on to performance contributors. And here you should enter the legal names of everyone who made an audible contribution to the music. For example, those who played guitar, bass, or drums during the recording. In this registration, it's important to use their real names. This is also the counterpart to the Gramex or Sami registration if you're from Denmark or Sweden. And you'll also need to submit a list to Gramex or Sami afterwards. But it is required to enter this data in order for the release to be approved. So during registration, we have here, for instance, Simon Larsen, who is the primary singer. And then we have Alex Brook. And here you can select either featured performer or non-featured performer. This impacts how much each person earns when the music is played, for example, on TV. If it's a band, then all band members are featured artists. But if you're a solo artist, then the main artist is the featured artist, or the primary performer. However, if you've asked someone or paid someone to solely record some guitar, that person would need to be registered as a non-featured performer. He plays the guitar, and he's a non-featured performer in this case. Then we're moving on to master rights, and beneath this field you should always select the option that mostly suits your situation in master rights, meaning the ownership of the sound file. The P line is the phonographic copyright. Here you write the year that the specific sound file track was first registered, followed by your imprint. So in this case, it's going to be 2025 Seaweed Production. Moving on to ISRC, which stands for International Standard Recording Code, which is essentially a barcode for the sound file, as I mentioned earlier. You can press this button here if you don't already have an ISRC code for the song. Ownership for this sound recording. Here, I will choose I am the original master copyright owner. If you made the music yourself, even with help from others, like collaborating with a producer or other paid session musicians, you should choose this option. This is the case for most self-releasing artists. However, if you're unsure about ownership, for example, because you bought the beat or other musical pieces and used them in your song, or if you're a label releasing for others or something similar, you can check the ownership guide linked in the video's description for further clarification. Then we have the country of recording. Here you choose the country where you recorded the release. And in this case, we will choose Sweden, since the band The Seaweed Dreamers recorded the album in Sweden. Moving on to nationality of original copyright owner. Here you should select the country where the copyright owner holds citizenship. And again, in this case, it is Sweden. Then we have something here called sampling. This field should only be filled out if samples were used in the creation of the song. However, this also requires that you have obtained permission from the original copyright owners of the sampled song. No samples were used in this case, so we'll simply skip this. Now we have filled in the data for the first track, and you should also fill out the data for the remaining songs. But to do that process a lot easier, you can use the apply to all function. So for instance, here we have apply to all, and so on. Same goes for the P line, same goes for the songwriter and the producer, and so on. And then we'll click save. Now we're at scheduling and pricing, and we have something here called original release date. This is the date the release will appear on streaming services. If the release has been out before and it's a transfer from another distributor, you need to enter the original release date here. But in this case, we're gonna put June 13th. Sales date. This is the date when the release will be available on streaming services. And for new releases, the original release date and the original sales date are the same. So we will simply just put it there. It takes a minimum of 4 business days for the services to approve the release and get it ready for release on streaming platforms. However, we recommend that you upload at least 2 weeks ahead of general releases and 6 weeks for releases that need pitching. For pre-order info, you should select No Pre-order. This is a tool that can be used to make the release available for purchase before the release date. Be aware that this is not a pre-save link or landing page. You can request those after the release has been officially launched in our members area. So when your release is approved in Workstation, then you can request a pre-save or a landing page link in the members area. However, instead of using the pre-order function, we recommend that you use DiGiDi Profile for pre-releases, which offers similar functionality in terms of giving fans access to the music before the official release. You can do this after the release has been uploaded and approved in Workstation, and you can read more about this in the link in the video description for pre-releases and DiGiDi Profile. Then we have download album pricing. This field should, as a default, be set to mid-front for album pricing or mid for track pricing. The price is standardized according to the regions where the music is being attempted to be purchased. But if you want to adjust the pricing, make sure it's cheaper to buy the full album than buying the tracks individually. Then we will press save here and move on to territory restrictions. And as a default, everything is correct on this page. The release will be available in all the territories listed to the left. And if you have an agreement to manage the release in specific regions, you can set it up here. Currently, Russia is listed as a region where we do not deliver due to an embargo. But if there's any market you wish to not deliver your product to, select the country from the list here and click, let's see here, move selected to not cleared for sale. But in this case, we're gonna deliver it to globally here, but with Russia as an exempt. Then you'll press save. Now we're at publishing obligation. And publishing obligation is a US-centered system used in relation to songwriter rights. Here, you need to enter the name of the publisher or the entity managing composer and songwriting rights for the release you are issuing or making a cover of. Since the Seaweed Dreamers is independent and doesn't have a publisher for this album, you would select 100% controlled or administered by my label for all tracks here. And since the Seaweed Dreamers don't have a publisher for any of the tracks, we will just leave that field empty. So now we've gone through all the steps, but if we look on the left here, you'll see that it says validate product, which means that the release isn't quite ready yet. Once everything is filled out, the name will change to submit product. If we check here to the left, we can see that there's a check mark under all the filters except for tracks. So it seems in this case like we've forgotten to enter information for some of the tracks. If we click the button here, the system will highlight what needs to be entered. So we click validate product here, and we see that we have some errors highlighted in the sections here. So we can see on tracks that we have missing information on all of the different tracks here. So I will just correct that and I'll get back shortly. Okay, now everything looks correct and we can click the submit product button. When we click this button, the release is sent to our approval team and we will check the release every day afterward. If we notice any issues that need to be fixed before we can approve the release, we will send you an email detailing what needs to be corrected. Once the release is approved, it will take 3 to 5 business days before the services receive it, and it will be available in their system until the release date you've chosen. If you later realize that you've entered incorrect data for the release, most things can be corrected after the release has been approved. At that point, there will be just a small edit button next to the field that you want to edit. You can make the correction and click the submit product button again. However, there are some corrections that need to be requested through DiGiDi, such as changes to release data and territory restrictions. You can find these forms for those in our members area. Please note that it's not possible to change ISRC codes and track order after the release has gone through. This actually requires a new upload. All right, thank you so much for watching and good luck with your upload. If any questions arise, you are always welcome to contact us via email or phone. So let's press submit product here and it's sent to our approval team. So have a great day. Bye.